man, let's talk to John Smoltz, who joins us on the WadeFord.com hotline. Smoltzy, man, how's the offseason going for you?
Man, I know I don't have to tell anybody. I'm tired of being cold.
Right. Well, we just assume you jet to play golf somewhere in Florida every weekend.
No, man, this is. I am a full-blooded Georgian.
All right.
I grew up in Michigan, and I freeze now.
Yeah.
And I just like to be warm. So, other than that, I'm doing okay.
Brother, we're with you. That ice thing last week, I didn't want any part of it. So hopefully we get some better weather. Hey, by the way, tomorrow, it's part of a 5-hour announcement, Hall of Fame ballot. We were just talking about Chipper. I mean, just a few words, man, about this guy. We know he's going to be a first ballot. He's getting in. But just a few words about Chipper Jones.
Yeah, he was an unbelievable talent. I don't have to, echo. Chipper had, from a very young age, you could probably see, there's very few players that were born and created to be a star, and he has the perfect name, right? Chipper Jones,
Right.
Greatest switch hitter that I've ever seen. But let me just tell you, when he was young and Maddox was on the mound, I knew something was going to be interesting about Chipper on a pop fly that ended up being around between the catcher and first base line, and Maddox was just kind of playing traffic cop to let him know who's going to catch the ball. And here comes this eager third baseman flying out of nowhere, knees Maddox in the calf, buckles him, and drops him to his knees, and Maddox absolutely lambasted him in the dugout, and it never happened again. But I could just see this eager, shortstop that's learning to play third base. There was no harness then, and he certainly harnessed into one of the greatest third basemen in our generation.
And one of the greatest starters and closers. Did it both, man. John Smoltz is with us here, Hall of Famer on the WadeFord.com hotline. A guy that's up for, I guess this is his 4th year that he's up, and he kind of gets lost in the shuffle. John, you play with him for a season or two. Gary Sheffield, 500 home runs, 2,600 hits, played forever, and it was money.
He was the most feared right-handed hitter I'd ever seen, and that goes a long ways for trying to face great hitters. But he had a absolute presence about him that he dominated baseball for a long time, and he again learned to play different positions, bounced around, and I think had 132 RBIs one year for us and 30-some or whatever home runs, however many home runs he hit. But a prolific hitter. The guy that for me, and I've been singing this tune for a long time, and it bothers the heck out of me, is Fred McGriff. The absolute model of perfection of hitting third or fourth, did it the right way, as clean as a whistle, and yet his bump is looked at as nothing. So, to me, this game has all been documented by a lot of things that didn't go right and a lot of things that players did in the era that I played in, but we don't talk enough about the players that did do it the right way and know that those numbers are legit. And for me, Fred McGriff does not get any love at all in that category.
John Smoltz joining us here on Dukes and Bell. It's a great point, John. It really is. I do want to ask you, what you played against him, you pitched against him, you knew him, you know him. I don't know what the relationship is. What's your thoughts on Bonds, Barry Bonds?
Well, for Barry and just the industry of baseball, and we all know that there are certain players that are going to be above the rest, and he was above the rest before anything ever got associated with Barry Bonds. He was a bad, bad human being that could do it all: run, hit, throw, play defense. And I think when everything kind of turned south in baseball, and people were certainly getting known for their prolific power, and whether it was artificial or not, one could assume it was, I think the playing field got leveled, and he destroyed a lot of different things that we know today as home run records and all and so forth. So, look, I'm a big believer that people are allowed to make their choices, but they're not allowed to reap the benefits of everything just because you made a choice to go a different direction. So if your choice was to artificially help yourself compete in a game where it's hard for 162 games, you reap the financial benefit of that. Why should you also reap the Hall of Fame benefit if you truly know that that was something that was frowned upon? So I've heard every argument there is to hear, and what makes me a little bit angry is when people water it down and go, what's the difference? There's a huge difference. And what I would tell writers all the time is, Just say somebody sitting at home steals all your work and publishes it and becomes known for one of the best writers out of nowhere, and it's your work, you're going to be furious. That's why there's a word called plagiarism. So unless you can understand what that pain is like on your level or know the disadvantage that exists, it's hard for a player to sit back and go, oh, well, it just is the way it is. And for a guy like me and others that are a higher percentage, people think that the majority of players in that era did something. And I would disagree vehemently with that, but yet we don't have any judge or juror to be able to understand how do you sift between what is right and what is wrong, and not having something I've heard people say, well, it's not on the record. Well, if somebody doesn't answer the question, it's probably on the record.
It's funny, John, 'cause we were just talking about this before you came on, saying, and you basically said the same thing you just addressed, saying how many guys were in that era, because two ways. Guys get a shadow cast over them, which they don't deserve, and then conversely, how many guys were going up against guys just trying to stay in the show that were using performance-enhancing drugs. Do you feel, how about this, wrap this up with this question. Do you feel that maybe, is there a penance that's paid that these guys don't get and they got to wait till they're the Veterans Committee? Is that fair, or is you don't want them in at all?
Well, first of all, I don't get a vote, so it doesn't matter. But what I would ask people to consider is, if you have a certain stance 5 years ago, why would it change 5 years from now? Meaning, it's the old adage, when you get tired of fighting, when is right, less right? And it's like, I've used this, you have 5 kids, and the first 3 you're so adamantly disciplined, and you make sure they have rules, and then the last 2 you're tired, and you just give up. And I would hate for people to have that approach. The Hall of Fame is going to tell everyone's story. The Hall of Fame is not responsible to enshrine everybody just to tell the story. So those stories are going to be told. The greatest players in the game are going to have certain things put on them and asterisks that are going to be forever because of the era they played in. So, when you make a decision and you feel strongly about something, I guess I have a hard time understanding what's changed 9 years later. Because if I got falsely accused, I can promise you guys, if somebody came out tomorrow and says, I have evidence that John Smoltz took steroids and accused and tried to, I would be on national TV taking a lie detector test and doing whatever you want to get my character back, to be falsely accused. On the flip side, if I just handle it very gently and never answer the question, then I think you kind of know the answer.
Smoltzy, how do you feel about specialists? Because I think there's a place. We bring up Trevor Hoffman. I watched Hoff. I covered him. He was amazing as a closer, and you know this. But I think that these guys deserve as much recognition as everyday guys, and sometimes I don't know if people look at it that way.
I totally agree, and I never understood that part. It's kind of like in the NFL when I don't think there's very many punters or kickers in the Hall of Fame, but yet they were their game. They were given the position and did it to the best of their ability and better than anybody else. I think when somebody makes a decision that Trevor Hoffman is going to be a closer, why do we hold that against the player? And all he did was dominate. And, it's basically Rivera than Trevor Hoffman. And I think the role, although changed over time, Goose Gossage, if I was Goose Gossage, I'd feel a little different. I'd feel like, my gosh, 3 innings to get a save. You've got to judge the era in which the era of that player was performing. It's not like he went to the club and said, hey, I think I could be, he was doing the role they asked him to do and did it the best. He was as dominant as it gets. He came in the game, and then you have people say, well, he didn't have huge moments. He didn't deliver. Like, he dominated the game to give his team a chance for huge moments. So I definitely, if he doesn't get in this year, I'll be shocked. He'll definitely get in next year.
All right, Smoltzy, one last thing. Other Halls of Fame guys get to vote. I mean, at some point, they let you guys, like you and Sherholz, would probably know a little bit more about this last generation of players.
Yeah, I'm interested. Look, when whoever was sitting around way back when to come up with the rules and come up with the criteria, and you would hope that it would stand the test of time. And there's things that have changed, both from the voting standpoint of how many you can select versus how now. I mean, I'm more disappointed about Andrew Jones and his percentage in his first year. Hopefully he gets to stick around and people can digest his career. But it would be nice. Yeah, it would be nice to have an influence, maybe not a high influence, but an influence of guys who in the game saw these guys play, know what it's like, and know what the difference is on guys who we're not talking about the Ken Griffey Jr.'s or the Chipper Jones. We're talking about guys that are Hall of Famers, but maybe not the most obvious to everyone who didn't get a chance to see him play.
Smoltz, man, we appreciate you jumping on with us. We want to catch back up with you and talk a little bit more about the Braves. The farm system's best in baseball. Maybe our expectations should be a little bit more, but we'll get to that, man, and we appreciate you joining us today. And remember, guys, MLB Network exclusively revealing the results of the Hall of Fame ballot tomorrow at 6 as part of their 5-hour announcement. The show begins at 3 p.m. Smoltz, thanks so much, man.
You got it, guys.
Cool beans. Smoltz, great stuff, guys. And if you just tuned in and you missed it, you're going, oh, crap, I missed it. I think we're going to replay that in the 6 o'clock hour.